I think it's safe to say most of us have rain gauges in our backyard, front yard, somewhere. I got a couple.
Yeah,
I wonder
gotta know
why.
how much rain we got.
Yeah, exactly. Still trying to figure that out. Jacob, tell us more though about how accurate they are, right?
Yeah, some are manual, some are automated. They come in all shapes and sizes, and we've seen some rain reports from this week, from our rain, especially Monday and into Tuesday. But where do we get these rain reports from? Primary source is going to be from Automated Surface Observing Systems, what are called ASOS sites. These are at usually the airports, and the reason why they're at airports is because it's close to runways where planes land, and is aviation focused in that regard in order to get observations really close to where planes are taking off and landing, and you usually have National Weather Service offices close to the airports as well. So it makes sense to have these sensors that measure temperature, dew point, wind speed, etc., but they also measure precipitation. They usually have this big wind screen around them in order to get the most accurate measurement, and then the rain falls into some sort of cylinder and it's measured using kind of a tipping bucket style where you have the rain fall in and it gets measured really accurately. And again, those are located across the region. They're either called ASOS sites or AWOS sites, which are a little bit lower tech. They record slightly less variables. But again, those are automated sites that we look at for hourly observations and to get rainfall reports over a longer period of time. They're usually long-term climate observing sites too, because they stay in one place and record those variables throughout a long period of time. Now, we also get automated reports from the North Dakota Agricultural Weather Network. That network is 155 stations across the region. They have a nice interface, nice website that lists rainfall reports, temperature. Again, all of these are done autonomously, and these sites are still being set up across the region. It's a pretty cool network, kind of helping to fill in gaps across the region. Now, we also need manual reports, and one of those ways of recording precipitation and other weather variables by hand with humans across the region and across the country is with the National Weather Service's Cooperative Observing Program. And this co-op program uses specific types of rain gauges, and this also allows us to have really good long-term climate sites where one person is recording these weather variables for a long period of time in order to fill in some gaps across the region. Now, there's also what's called the COCO-ROS program, the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. You can get a rain gauge through that program, and across the entire country, there's thousands of people that go out every morning if there's precipitation and report that amount to a website, and that gets put into a big database. This was the North Dakota map from the COCO-ROS website from the rain we had Monday and into Tuesday. So we have several dozen, maybe over 100 people recording precipitation across our region. Then we also have our great viewers that send in reports directly to us, maybe sending in Sky Spy photos or letting us know how much rain they have in their own rain gauges in their backyard. But the National Weather Service has standardized rain gauges for their Cooperative Observing Program or for that COCO-ROS program. There's one rain gauge that's 8 inches in diameter, the opening where the rain falls down, with a funnel that goes into a 2-inch inner tube that can hold 2 inches of rain. And that can measure up to the 100th of an inch of rain. So we're getting pretty accurate here with these rain gauges. And the whole capacity of the rain gauge is 22 inches. If this smaller inner tube that's inside this big cylinder were to overflow, that whole big cylinder can hold 22 inches of rain. So that's a large capacity. This one is a 4-inch diameter rain gauge, plastic gauge that is pretty much just half of everything of the 8-inch diameter gauge. And these are a lot more common because they're easier to handle. But both will catch the same amount of rain, and both will be able to measure the rainfall really precisely up to the 100th of an inch using a ruler sticking it into this inner tube. So, of course, people usually have these inexpensive rain gauges in their backyard, but they can be inaccurate. We'll still accept those reports. The National Weather Service will still accept those reports from these style rain gauges that are usually a lot smaller and don't have an inner tube. Now, the reason why they can be a little bit more inaccurate is because of that opening. If the opening is a lot smaller that the rain falls into, it can hit the lip and bounce into the rain gauge, kind of lead to a higher rainfall amount. So using one with the larger opening, at least 3 inches in diameter. Again, this one that is a fairly common rain gauge within the COCO-ROS network is a 4-inch diameter opening. So with that larger opening and a funnel into a smaller inner tube, that can help us to get more precise rainfall measurements. And the importance of having these manual observations is pretty cool. And this network across the country of these cooperative observers goes back into the 1800s. So it's a long-term system, and these observers are very dedicated to measuring these weather and climate variables. We have a bunch of these locations in North Dakota, and I was actually part of the Cooperative Observing Network when I was in college at Penn State. We had a site on our campus, and we went out every morning and measured temperature with physical thermometers. We also had a digital thermometer to double check those measurements, but we had this shelter where those thermometers were located. We had that 8-inch diameter rain gauge that you have to manually measure the precipitation in every morning. So those cooperative observers are pretty cool, and these were kind of the style of reports that I wrote down when I was on the clock, essentially, of recording observations for that Penn State Cooperative Observing Network. So using manual reports is really important and fills in those gaps in between the autonomous observing stations. So to get your own rain gauge, that 4-inch diameter rain gauge with the smaller inner tube that can get pretty accurate rainfall amounts, usually they're mounted on a post either in your backyard or in your field. You can go to cocoros.org and sign up for that service. National Weather Service is always appreciative of having more reports throughout the region, and we are too, so we can pass along more accurate rainfall reports after a rain system comes through. And you can think of CocoRoz as kind of the minor leagues for the co-op program. If you're going to be very dedicated with observing rainfall amounts, you can join the Cooperative Observing Program. The National Weather Service in Bismarck across western and central North Dakota has 160 cooperative observers, and these are some people on the list of the longest tenured cooperative observers. So that program is really cool to see how people are dedicated to measuring rainfall and other climate variables on a very daily and consistent basis. But having an accurate rain gauge really helps us out in order to know exactly how much rainfall was happening across the region, and rainfall can really be variable from one location to another. North Bismarck could get 2 inches of rain, South Bismarck could get a ½ an inch.
Sounds like Labor Day night when you were covering the storms. That's exactly right. So
knowing exactly how much rain fell in each location, always helpful for us.
Certainly is.
Great.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you,
thanks
Jacob.
as always, Jacob.